As soon as you have the Chaos shirt there.
Sorry?
The Chaos shirt.
What about it?
I was just thinking of Chaos AD as an album by this band Sepultura. Sepultura. Like, I think it means grave in Portuguese. It's like a metal band from the 80s and 90s. Sepultura. Yeah,
I'm not sure what to do with that information. I'll add it to the.
You never had like a death metal phase?
Not really, no.
Not really.
What
metal.
was? Yeah, I mean, sure, metal. I mean, I liked Godsmack. But I think, yeah, as we talked about before, a lot of those bands at the time were like alt rock or something. Like it wasn't a clear. Nothing firmly in the metal category.
You didn't dive into the, it's real metal when like the cover looks like, some 12-year-old had like a red crayon and he's just like drawing like corpses and
right.
Like if it doesn't have, at least like back then, like if it didn't have like really cheesy cover art of like, dead bodies and Satan and dismembered, organs and stuff, then
it's not real death metal.
Yeah, like if it had really like professional or like kind of tasteful cover art, then it probably wasn't real metal. Like real metal has like the shitty, crayon fucking tear.
Well, what's an example?
Illustrations. Well, like Cannibal Corpse.
I've heard the name.
They're like they just have these like really silly, heavy metal, like the magazine, not the music kind of album covers of
just trying to pull it up here.
Cannibal mutilated vagina is like the name of the album or something, like Tomb of the Mutilated, and
I mean it's not quite
kind of, at least they did
toddler or crayon tier. I mean it's kind of like fantasy.
Yeah,
art,
it's
right?
pretty like shitty art, right? I mean, if you had can we like flash albums up on the screen later?
I don't want to edit it in.
You don't want to edit them in?
You can hold it up to the camera if you want to do it. I don't want to add additional steps.
It's too annoying, or yeah. Well, it's just like things where
just more stuff to
just things like this where if it looks like this, it's like crappy. It's a real death metal album. You could
looks
hold
like
it.
you could hold it up. It's pretty like cartoony, basically, right?
Tracking.
It's there.
I'm talking about the first album by a band that's actually just called Death. It's considered one of the starter tier death metal bands of the 80s. They kind of got the genre running. Are we tracking? Yeah.
It's all good. Just I feel like we're all over the place here at the beginning. Like I think you clicked off your mic at some point.
Once, yeah. Had a chaotic start.
Yeah.
For chaos.
Yeah, I mean, was there something you're thinking of talking about? I was kind of thinking if we want to pick up the dating app.
Oh yeah, we sort of left that unfinished, didn't we? What were we?
Well, I think we're talking about basically the connection between, the sort of distorted reality of dating apps, and then the sort of fallout of disenfranchised, I guess, incel culture along the lines of what was his name?
Elliot Rogers,
or whatever.
Yeah, going off on that one.
Yeah. Or we could talk about something else, but that's where we left it off.
That's where we left it.
Yeah.
I think we did get up to that. Yeah. I mean, that's something I've sort of checked out with. I mean, I think a lot of it is happening on Reddit, right? Is sort of the incel
stuff. I feel like it's kind of confided to even more obscure websites. I know one's like goodlookingloser.com.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably some on Reddit as well. I feel like Reddit, probably around the time of Elliot Rogers, they started banning
cracking
those
down on that.
sorts of subreddits, basically.
I think there was I noticed a lot of that like terminology is like creeping into just like more mainstream social
like the
media.
looks maxing.
Yeah,
stuff.
stuff's like I just have like, there's always like on Instagram there's always these like silly looks maxing videos or something popping up. You know, it's like I don't know the difference between being 5'7" and 5'10" or something. What it's like so silly, right? But I don't know, just these like really silly memes and stuff that keep popping up for some reason. I'm like, where's this coming from, or what's the source behind this? There's
I've certainly noticed it pop up more in the vernacular of just people casually even referencing it in speech, right? Without necessarily having
like
any
where
affiliation.
It came from, or,
Well, they might know where. It's a good question. I mean, they don't acknowledge where it came from in mentioning it, but there's kind of fixation, I guess, right, on maybe weird, unnecessary details.
Yeah. There's a lot of that kind of stuff is kind of breaking.
Did you ever look into like mewing?
Yeah.
To what extent?
Just taking a look at it
casually.
Yeah.
It is. Is it something you ever gave much thought to? Like, I guess even like tongue posture, for example.
Oh no, but I never really like to the extent that I understand it. Like he thinks that people are like too slack jawed or something. But like I normally feel like my tongue is just again like. Doesn't he think that it's supposed to be against the roof of your mouth?
Basically, yeah.
But I feel like I usually have it there, like anyway.
Yeah.
Like I'm definitely not walking around with my mouth hanging open or fucking slack jawed yokels, as they used to call them. You know, people that are like mouth breathers or whatever, where they're just like walking around like.
Yeah.
You know, like I mean, I used to be. I mean, that was kind of
yokel's supposed to be like hillbilly, right?
Well, yeah, but like there's just this term slack-jawed yokel, which is like, you know, people that are just walking around with their mouth open or something. So I feel like most of the time, like my tongue would be on the roof of my mouth anyway,
right?
Or like I definitely wouldn't be walking around like just with a slack jaw or something,
right?
So I mean, sort of. I feel like if anything, my jaw is too tight from fucking existential
dread,
terror, having to live in capitalism. So I definitely never felt like jaw or tongue tightness was like.
Well, it's not necessarily tightness so much as I mean tongue posture. I mean it's not like flat against the roof of your mouth. Apparently it's supposed to be kind of gently resting against it or something. I don't know. I looked into it very casually.
He doesn't really. I do know someone that apparently had someone we know who I won't name, but
he did like all the chewing stuff.
Well, he mentioned this like special gum or something, and apparently he actually did have results for it. So but
there certainly is something to it, I think. But whether or not you want to devote the attention specifically
conscious attention to it,
But I mean, I guess you should, but in parallel with everything else. But I think the danger of the sort of looks maxing culture is just the idea of if I obsess about this trivial detail and like perfect it, then I'll have
something
the outcome I'm looking for, right?
There's probably no
then the world will
yeah.
treat me the way I want to be treated.
Yeah, I mean, there's people getting ridiculous like surgeries and all kinds of
like the bone breaking,
and just like unnecessary plastic surgery, probably. Plastic surgery, I mean, I never I feel like I have a pretty open mind for plastic surgery. Like, I feel like if it's something you want to do, then just do it. But I think the people that do it like every year, like you're probably using it as
it's just body dysmorphia, right?
Yeah, like if it's not something that you think can like ever really be fixed, then like it's sort of like what are you doing or something.
I wonder how prevalent it is in North America these days, because we have a bit of a distorted view here.
Well, so
since it's quite common in Korea,
if
increasingly here.
Like if people are watching from I don't know, the Anglosphere or something. Plastic surgery, at least in I would say it's like probably about 90% in Korea and like maybe pushing 50% in Japan, just in terms of like how common or like kind of normalized it is.
Certainly very normalized.
Yeah.
And I think like the most obvious example, I don't know if this qualifies as plastic surgery, but cosmetic surgery is double eyelid surgery.
Yeah.
You'll see like quite young females, you know, probably like end of high school.
Females. Cisgender biological females. You're not supposed to, I feel like there's people that think that like female is like a slur now.
Is a slur now?
Well, using it as like is like a noun or something. So you're not. Apparently, it's like a right-wing dog whistle.
I don't even know what to say to that anymore. Like, okay.
So that's the thing. That's the thing that just like makes me want to just like double down and just use it in like every sentence or something. But well, I just like I refer to people as males all the time too. So I'm like, I don't really human
well,
males.
I was going to be like young girls.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to say that. That isn't the meaning I'm trying to convey here. I'm trying to say I don't see XY chromosome bearers getting eyelid surgery, but I do see a lot of XX chromosome bearers.
You see a lot of biological as opposed to mineral females.
Mineral females?
Well, you know, there's biological there's people that use the phrase biological women.
Right.
Which is like even the
if you're talking about the context of like transsexual.
Well, yeah, that's what they're trying to say.
I'm stumbling over my words because I don't know what word I'm supposed to be using at this point. Right?
These are all very silly terms for like because like even the phrase like people say like biological parents,
right?
But like there's no like there are no like even foster parents are biological in the sense that like they're organisms. They're organisms. So. It's just an awkward way to say that.
Right.
Like, you get that they're trying to say, like, foster parents or something, but...
Blood parents,
yeah.
Which also sounds like a good name for a metal band or album or something.
There's Blood Brothers is the... there was like a sort of... I don't even know what to call it, like metalcore or something. There's a band called Blood Brothers. It was pretty good, actually.
Okay.
So yeah, Blood Parents sounds like
I'll add that to the data points.
It's very screamy, kind of just like spazzed out kind of stuff. But it's good.
When I was in Spain over the summer, I noticed a lot of like Kim
biological
Kardashian
females. Yeah, you noticed
biological females with Kim
biological
Kardashian
females everywhere. Biological
Kim Kardashian
females.
Aesthetic, right?
Yeah.
So, well,
isn't that even like? I feel like that's even like a little bit outdated now. Like, I feel like that's like a reference point from like 10 years ago.
Well,
I
think
people
the thing
still
is
trying to look like Kim. I mean,
well, I think she keeps changing how she looks as well, right?
Yeah.
So she's kind of like leading the pack in that weird way.
Isn't she like 45 or something? Like, I feel like she's probably getting to the point where.
Well, that's biological age.
It's biological age, but
mineral age.
But isn't that a different thing too? Like, isn't that her actually chronological age? Not. But like, isn't that the youth
right
hacker or whatever?
Well, because maybe her telomere length is half made out of silicone anyway. So
isn't that like the guy that's trying to biohack himself? Like his chronological
Peter
age
Attia.
No, was it Brian Johnson?
There's a few of them. I think Peter Attia's Attilia. I'm sorry, I'm butchering his name. Listened to a podcast with him. Actually, it was quite interesting. Attia.
Attia.
Yeah, is one of them.
He's trying to biohack his age.
Well, he's just one of these like human optimization people. But yeah, the advice I've heard from him seemed quite practical. He was kind of like, don't pay too much attention to like the data metric stuff. Like if your app says you slept poorly but you feel fine, then you're probably just fine, and probably shouldn't pay too much attention. Anyway, different tangent.
That's one thing with biofeedback kind of stuff is like you end up sort of optimizing yourself for the measurements rather than actually like yourself, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So like you might, so yeah, if your app says you slept poorly, then you might be like, oh, did I, or something, right? Like, so it might be like gaslighting you, or sort of you might feel like a need to conform to what you're getting told rather than how you feel or something.
Well, I have it the other way around. Like my app usually says 99% efficiency, and I was like waking up
really
and
crap
just
or something.
Not particularly crap, but I'm like, man, like I remember being 11 years old and like waking up and being like full of energy and alive,
full of life,
and like I stopped feeling that probably, I don't know, let's say grade like 10 or 11. That feeling kind of started disappearing.
I gotta get a lot of sleep to feel that pump to like actually.
It's not even like a time or I don't know. It's just that quality of restedness is no longer accessible to me.
Okay, I still feel like I can get very rested if I have. I mean, in practice, I almost never do because I'm usually having to like wake up earlier than I would like or something. But I feel like in theory, I can still get very rested.
Yeah, I mean, the most recent one I can remember was a few years ago where my girlfriend at the time, like we both woke up.
Was she biological female?
She's biological female.
Chronological female.
Mineral female as well, female, I think female across the board, as far as I know. Don't want to assume.
Yeah.
But like we both just randomly slept very well that night for no apparent reason.
Yeah.
But like so much so that we both remarked the next morning that like we're feeling especially well
rested.
So, but like how or why? Right?
That just seems like such a modest victory in life. Like,
but it's so
very well rested.
Okay. I mean, like what more do you want out of your morning, right? Like the first feeling.
Folgers in your cup. The best part of waking up.
Do you? I feel that. Minus the Folgers, but yeah, I mean,
crystallized coffee.
Do you look forward to coffee every morning?
Coffee. I enjoy having the first coffee of the morning. Yeah, I definitely enjoy it.
Do you do you feel giddy as you're like making it or getting it?
I wouldn't say I'm like that pumped, but I'm definitely like, oh, I'm glad I like have it now. But I'm not like crazily excited because I feel like it's kind of just downhill from there. It's like you get caffeinated.
This is kind of the peak of the day.
The peak is when you just kind of get in terms of
hit of dopamine. And
in terms of coffee intake, like having another 4 coffees is not really gonna other than give you an anxiety attack. Like it's not really gonna like improve the first one.
Well, much of anything really. But
that's the problem with cigarettes too. Is like it's such a like inefficient drug because like it's all downhill after the first one of the day.
Well, first puff, arguably,
arguably even the first puff. So you're like, if you like smoke another 3 packs on top of that, you're not really like getting beyond the first puff of the first one, I guess.
It's not gonna get any better.
It's not really, it's such a like inefficient.
Possibly by design. I wonder.
I think Oscar Wilde said something like that, where he's like, a cigarette is the perfect pleasure because it's exquisite and it's completely unsatisfying.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, they probably had better tobacco quality back then anyway.
I wonder.
I mean, they're probably just smoking like legit straight from the plant or whatever, without, chemical packing or ammonia or whatever they're putting in it now.
Yeah, it would be interesting. I think I mentioned Doka previously.
Yeah. There's these channels on YouTube where they like dig out military rations from like World War II.
Right.
Like so someone will find like a leftover ration
just like in an attic somewhere.
Yeah, and like try to like eat it to the extent that he can without like, obviously dying or something. Right. But one of the things with these military rations is that they would have like cigarettes in them. And he's like,
there's no way you can still smoke those, right?
Well, he does, right?
But it's got to be so dry, right?
Well,
like probably
to the extent that like he tries it apparently. Right. And apparently he's like, even though it's kind of like smoking a fossil, but like he's like, he can tell that like the quality of the tobacco is like way strong compared to like a cigarette you would just like buy these days.
Interesting.
So he's like, wow, these are like crazy. There's like, damn, there's a lot of tobacco in them,
right?
Compared to now, and like they seem like.
Do you think they put like filler in now or what?
I don't even know, but I'm sure they were like. I'm sure people were smoking like pretty strong.
The fact that people are okay buying something so altered is crazy. But I mean, I guess it just proves a point about vice consumerism, I guess, where like, I mean, people eat the Big Mac without
the Big Mac or
thinking about the pink sludge that made the chicken nuggets or whatever.
Yeah.
People smoke cigarettes without caring that there's literally like 1,000 added chemicals to it, right?
Yeah. There's some things I feel like I pretty much, I can't even enjoy any fast food burgers really. Anymore, because it's just like, I mean, you get to a point where you're like, it's like just way too processed to sort of tolerate. And I think if you get out of the habit of ever having it, it just seems even the desire to step back into it is just definitely unless you're like maybe if you're like really tired and stressed or something, but like normally I feel like the desire just is not there.
Well,
if you get out of the habit of eating it,
that's why I need to keep the reps up to keep the body acclimated to it, so that you never fall out of it.
Yeah,
just be like Trump, I guess, and just spam McDonald's.
Spam McDonald's every day.
Yeah, I don't know how he does it. Right? How do you not feel terrible at 78 or whatever?
Is he actually eating it?
Seemed like it.
I'm a little bit suspicious, man. Like I feel like that's.
But like even drinking Coke. Do you think that's all? What you think he's just eating like organic under the table?
I'm a little, as with all these things, like I'm a little. Just knowing America, like it's just like one of those things where like you had like. Thing is, like Trump was like raised pretty. Trump was like sort of used to luxury, right?
Yeah.
So like when he was in the 70s and 80s, like I kind of doubt he was like sitting around ordering McDonald's. When he's got access to like real restaurant, like something about it doesn't.
Think it's just some like all American kind of posturing.
I think it's. I feel like it's a bit of maybe false populism,
right?
Well, you know that photo that came out recently where they're like all sitting around. They have like McDonald's or something.
Yeah, with like RFK or whatever.
I'm just like, come on, these dudes are not sitting around eating. Like, I feel like it's just such a. To me, it came across very staged, where it's like, well, you know what like false populism is, right?
Well, explain, I guess.
Well, like, populism is just in the sense that you're like appealing to like you know the
everyman or whatever.
Yeah, the supposed everyman or the supposed common man, and you're not like you know quotation marks
elitist or whatever, right?
Pandering to the elite okay, right? So but it's almost all just like a mirage, man, right? Because like how many non-elite people in practice make it to like governing positions, right? Like that weren't, again, including Trump. Like Trump was raised, rich, didn't have to go to the military, didn't have to do even succeed. I mean, his father was just throwing him casual millions to, get back in the saddle every time he failed at something.
Right.
So was Donald Trump as a younger man like sitting around eating in McDonald's? Like I sort of doubt it, man, because especially he's in the hotel business, right? So like a big part of hotels is having like fine dining. So like he was probably, I mean, I could be totally off base here, but like nothing about that makes any sense to me other than in the sense of like, fake populism, photo ops.
Right.
Like, oh, look, they're all sitting around eating like normal people. Like, let's vote for them, right? Like, like nothing.
Though, like during his first term, I remember it being more of a derogatory thing towards him, I think, right? Like, I feel like it was
but it feels like a strategy, like trying
like
to.
one way or the other.
Yeah, it feels.
Maybe,
It just feels like we were talking about this before with the JD Vance thing,
right.
Like that's like another,
I think that was off mic, right?
maybe
Yeah, I think that
we're
was
just
off
saying
mic.
that we're just sort of saying that like JD Vance has like the perfect like managed populism image.
Right.
Like he has a literal movie about his, supposedly, blue
All
collar,
American
all American blue
background,
collar
yeah.
background, right?
But basically, you said, or the idea is that he's being what's the word? Like set up,
Yeah.
kind of to be the new head of.
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly, right? Because how many more years of biological and chronological age does Trump even have? I mean, by the best circumstances.
Well, how old is JD Vance? Like 40 something.
Like I think
Mid-40s,
barely. No, I think like barely 40. Like not even.
Well, I mean, if like politics aside, if
Yeah.
the next leader can be, approximately 50 years old, I think that would be a great.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're clearly
for,
they clearly are trying to set up like some kind of next generation. But yeah, I mean, Donald Trump's image in like the 70s and 80s was kind of like a high roller,
right,
high class image. Like if you'd photographed him in like 1985, like eating McDonald's, like he probably would. It feels like he probably would have told you like don't print it. Because like it probably would have brought his image down at that point. You see what I'm saying, right?
Yeah,
so like you have to like, I mean, like convincing people to identify with. Well, that's like kind of the trick of politics is like elites convincing like the working class to relate to them. I guess even though it makes no sense. I mean, if you're literally born as a millionaire, like what?
Right?
How can like some minor possibly relate to Donald Trump's actual lived experience? Because like I mean you can't, right?
It reminds me of this cartoon I saw, kind of newspaper one panel cartoon style where it's a bunch of sheep or a sheep in a car driving on the freeway, and there's like a billboard for the next politician, and it's a wolf in like a suit.
It's like a wolf in a suit, and
I'm gonna eat you. And then the sheep thinks to himself, he really tells it like it is. Right? It's a real straight shooter.
Yeah, it's sort of like that. Or at least like the wearing a costume kind of thing, right? I feel like especially American politics is like that. Like other countries, I think they're like a little bit more. Well, I mean, England has like a literal House of Lords. So they literally still have like a hereditary ruling class.
Yeah.
It's just like born, like, so no one's, I think they're like a little bit more transparent about it. But in the, in the supposedly classless US, I mean, they have to be a bit more like, stage managed.
Right.
Like, let's have everyone sitting in front of, Big Macs and wearing, baseball caps, and
like the reality TV industry intersects with the political.
Yeah. So is he like really eating McDonald's? I kind of doubt it. I mean, maybe once in a while in front of the camera, but I'm like, he's probably got like a pretty serious dietary team that's like trying to keep him in good health and drain some blood from, I don't know, Brian Johnson's kids or something. Or those kids are probably just like donating blood to everyone,
just left and right.
Just the blood bags or whatever.
Beats. Yeah. What did I want to get back to?
Biological females. Yeah. I think we derailed that story. Oh, you were saying you had good sleep with a good night's sleep.
We're talking about plastic surgery, increasing prevalence here. I wonder. Yeah, we're asking in North America if it's like this. I can't remember where that was going. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like Japan and I guess kind of Korea is also sort of like the canary in the coal mine, of stuff. Where a lot of these things sort of happen here first, and then even like that word like NEET, like isn't that originally?
I'm probably like not in education.
I'm probably wrong, but I thought that was a Japanese term originally.
Yeah.
Although it could be totally off base.
I mean, they certainly use the katakana version where it's like the nito or whatever, right?
I might be off base here, but I seem to remember that originated here. I could be totally wrong.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, at least the hikikomori phenomenon kind of started here, where, yeah, people who just chose to not really try and pursue.
Okay, I'm wrong. So NEAT was first used by researchers in the United Kingdom. So fact check is
self
fact
checked.
So facts have been checked here.
Yeah, I mean, same thing with I guess like falling birth rate, right? That's been going on since what, the early 2000s or even the 90s here. And I guess the same thing's basically happening in the West, but the West is just aggressively
ignoring it.
Well, like opening their borders basically to keep population growing, right? It's like all immigrants basically. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean that usually happens. I mean that sort of did happen to the Romans too.
Like falling birth rate.
Well, yeah, because they got to the point where they sort of had like almost like a welfare setup. So they're more preoccupied with just living their lives rather than carrying on the empire, I guess.
Wouldn't you want to have kids if you're doing that though?
Yeah, you'd think so, but I mean, it's sort of a situation that's a little bit similar to now, where they're like wrapped up with other stuff, and they're not. I mean, I'm sure they're still having them, but like not at like the levels they originally probably were. So that's when you did start having a lot of immigration and people joining from other Germans and stuff and other barbarians or whatever, kind of shifting into the empire.
And that was towards the end of the Roman Empire.
Yeah. So it followed kind of a similar track.
Doesn't bode particularly well, I guess, for this current.
Well, it turns into those 1970s science fiction films like Zardoz, where it's like the far future. It's like about 16 immortals just sitting around playing marbles, and then I don't know. There's a few savages reproducing in the wilderness, and they just like throw them weapons from time to time, just for like the lulz, right?
Just to have a war amongst them, or
well, yeah. I mean, they're sort of like what would I think that's the Zardo setup is. Yeah, it's literally just like 14 or 16 or something immortals, or some really small number, and then there's just like savages outside the dome or whatever. Just living and fighting wars and getting up to primitive shenanigans or whatever.
I mean, my personal read, I'm sure shared by others on the falling birth rate, is mostly just kind of economic work-life balance related, right? I mean, like, isn't it kind of one of these things where it's like biological population will expand kind of to the capacity of their environment, right?
Yeah.
There's got to be some example with animals where some kind of mechanism will kick in once they've saturated their immediate environment. I guess with wolves, they like basically have territory disputes, so they kind of need to expand physically to separate from each other. Maybe not a great example. Chimps kind of do that
too. I mean, chimps are like kind of have these like resource reproduction wars where they're like moving around and staking out new territory.
But I feel like for the 21st century human, it's pretty like economically constrained, basically, where it's like, well, we can't start a family because we're paying like $2,000 per person to like live in a tiny apartment.
Yeah.
And like working 40, 50 hours a week to do that. So like
to do that. Yeah. So
what are you gonna do, right?
Too much else, right?
Yeah.
If you're living on a farm, you can just get the kid to start working pretty early and help out with the farm.
Yeah.
So you're like actually.
Well, if you had like any space to breathe, basically, right? Like if you had, if you're working, 30 hours instead of 50, right?
Yeah.
If you had more disposable income, right? You'd probably
kind of pull it off,
yeah.
right? Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely sort of where we're at now. Where the wave is maybe cresting.
On that note, I thought this was kind of funny and timely. Since we're talking about kind of Japanese relationships and families, yesterday I caught up with a friend from kickboxing, who's so he's Japanese and he's been interested in moving to Vancouver in Canada. And like we just caught up, but basically he like just had a son.
Okay, yeah.
And like he's moving to Vancouver like end of the month.
With his family?
No.
Just by himself?
Just by himself, yeah. Just
is he married or is
he's married, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean just another data point of exactly.
Is that for work though? Or is
it like work in the sense of that he's trying to move there and will eventually work there, but no, it's not like necessitated.
So he doesn't have like a job set up there yet?
No. He'll be working remotely.
Yeah.
Still with Japan, basically.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, basically,
so he's basically just leaving his newborn son and wife. Yeah. That's wild. Yeah,
it's pretty wild, right?
It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
I mean, hope that family has a good support network of.
Yeah.
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they have like elders and.
Well, it sounds like the wife basically is moving back to her parents, right?
Yeah.
So they'll basically raise the kid.
Yeah.
But I mean, just again, this is such a bizarre situation where it's like, oh, I just had a kid and I'm gonna voluntarily move
to
across the
country
globe
for a year,
right?
At least.
Now, I was asking him like, does your wife want to come to Vancouver? And he's like, no,
she just wants to chill here. Well, fair enough.
So
I mean,
it's some completely different.
If he comes back in a year, like, I mean, this kid's still pretty young. I mean, so in theory, like now would be the time to, I guess, do it.
To try.
To try rather than when the kid's like, I don't know, 5 or something.
Yeah.
Maybe paying a bit more attention. Yeah,
it's like, I guess to have a kid and for it to not be central to your narrative is the really confusing part to me. Yeah, because I guess if I were to have a kid, it would be quite intentional, I guess. Aligning with my energy, I guess, right?
Yeah, rather than just trying to like fit
some
it
peripheral
in on the side.
Kind of,
just like have it as a side quest. Or
a little have a kid side quest, right?
Side quest, yeah.
Get married side quest, have
a kid, and just try to fit it, squeeze it on the side. Right?
Then back to the main storyline where I locate myself. Move across the globe.
Yeah, wow. That's wild. But I mean, I guess if he does have some long-term plan for it, where you like but it doesn't sound like it. No, he's just doing it for the lulz, right? Yeah.
Basically, yeah. So
it's wild.
Anyway,
yeah.
Japanese relationships.
These relationships are I feel like things are gonna head more in that direction though, because.
And I think he met her off an app just to tie this together.
Met her an app, yeah. Well, I mean that's like normal now too, right? I mean, it's certainly very normal in Japan. So there's nothing strange about that. But
this is kind of a funny data point, maybe to share with people abroad. So there's a dating app called Pairs here in Japan, and what characterizes it is basically like basically the questions you fill out on your biography.
Yeah.
Where like, just broadly speaking, the sentiment I get with the app is, the assumption is, okay, you're both Japanese, so you already share 95% of like the same common values, right? Through coming up through the same society, same system, right? And then it's trying to optimize on like, do you want to have a kid? Like, maybe someday, yes, immediately. Do you want to get married? Like, yes, that's my goal. Or, if I meet the right person, do you smoke? Do you drink? Like once a week, twice a week, whatever. So they're just like the questions they ask you are like so trivial. And I don't know.
It's definitely like way more data points and like
Yeah.
I don't know, like I guess in theory, like in Tinder, you can flood it with data but I mean like 99% people.
I don't think
like,
Tinder like has any sort of like interviewee type
yeah,
stuff, does it?
I think you can fill in a profile sorta,
but it's just like a bio and like Instagram
it's pretty
and
sketchy.
Spotify, right?
It's pretty sketchy,
Yeah.
but I mean pairs, yeah, you could definitely cook up an entire, resume basically worth of everything they ask you to fill in.
But I guess what's funny is like they use that data to then give you like a compatibility score with people.
Yeah.
So like, their thesis basically is that if you can align the answers to these questions,
align those answers,
then that's like that'll make a good relationship.
There kind of is. I mean, like I guess there is like an element of truth to that where it's like, an element, if one person is like wants to have kids within a year and the other person is like, wants to travel the world and climb mountains or something. Like if people have completely different goals, then
for sure,
they're probably not gonna be on the same page or hit things off or So I think there is an element of truth to that.
There's an element,
It's probably not the deciding.
I guess it's just like how in the forefront of the app it is kind of humorous.
Well, that's what I think. That's what it's like. It is technically like a marriage.
Yeah, it's kind of oriented towards
app.
that.
Like it's not really like at least in theory, it's not really like a Tinder or something. Or I don't know, Bumble or whatever these things are.
Coffee meets bagels.
Coffee, yeah. So right. So
do you know that one?
Coffee Meets Bagels
was another dating app.
Like a new one? Or?
No, it's been around for a while. I don't even know if it's around anymore, but like 10 years ago it was around. I can't remember. Like the gimmick is basically they like suggest, the algorithm spits out 5 people per day that you can.
Oh, right.
So it's like less of the endless stack of swiping and
it just like throws Rex or something. Okay, yeah.
I can't remember how that all worked, but I thought the name was funny at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, 21st century romance in Japan.
Still happening, but still things are still happening. But
marry, have a kids, move, leave the family.
Just jump off to Canada or whatever. Yeah.
And that would be the kind of optimal scenario, I guess, in terms of population growth, basically, right? Versus slaving away at a corporate company and just never having a family, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, like I think I meant like kind of that family I mentioned last week or last time. Right. I mean, they're not getting divorced, so on paper it's stable and working out. I mean, still seems kind of weird, but still. Yeah. I mean, it's certainly checking all the boxes, I guess. So like boxes are being checked, but like under the surface, what's really happening, kind of hard to say. Yeah. But certainly boxes are getting, checked. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. Marriage maxing. Box maxing. I don't know.
Box maxing. Yeah.
Just trying to draw a parallel somewhere there.
It'd be nice if there was it'd be nice if these things were actually sophisticated enough that they could sort of, work at a level that they're like if there really was some super AI intelligence that could
be like a matchmaker.
Well, yeah, if it had some more actual deep understanding of these people are actually likely to get along, or this looks good on paper, but the reality is it's gonna be a disaster or something, right?
Yeah.
So, because I feel now people are just this looks good on paper, it's gonna be good, or it ticks the boxes,
right?
It's gonna be good, but a lot of the time it's just a disaster or something,
or
at the very least doesn't work as it, works in theory but not in practice, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'd be cool if there was some benevolent AI that could match things up or organize stuff.
Would you want, expanding on that, how about like AI, AGI, global ruler that, resolves all conflicts and
Well, again, they've like that's popped up in science fiction like a bunch of places where they're like even assuming it works as planned. So yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting possibility. Would it, assuming it works as designed, seems like it'd be cool. But I think we talked about this before. Like, there's some stories where it just like creates constant positive synchronicities that like are like much too complicated for a human to like really even be aware of a lot of the time. But it's just constantly making sure things go a little bit better than they like otherwise would.
Right. Just
maybe maybe
people into the
right things
place.
like that, like putting people in the right place at the right time, or like making sure certain things pop up at certain times, so the right person sees them, or like so it just like from the point of view of the human inhabitants of the city, it just all seems like natural coincidences, but it's actually all highly stage managed by an AI to, again, for reasons that'd be too complicated to ever really explain, but in a way that kind of works out positively, which I thought was a cool idea.
It's a cool idea
because like you wouldn't even really be aware of that, but you just be like, oh, I just met like the right person, or I just found this.
It's totally feasible too.
It's like something that
to actually imagine it. Kind of, we're not too far from that, maybe. Yeah. But then the AI needs to have a solid understanding, I guess, of who people are and what people's values actually are. I guess. Oh, this is kind of strange. My friend, I mean, I kind of just want to show you this instead. Basically, my friend spun up this Guru GPT.
Guru GPT?
Yeah, like you can instruct Chat GPT to play a certain role, and he like made it a spiritual guru.
Yeah.
And so like I'll show you. Basically, you can read it out loud, I guess, but this is what it's spitting out. I don't know, it struck me as kind of just like spiritual word salad or something, or like but he's saying he was also like trying to see if it could like pray for him from like the digital AI space. Which raised an interesting question, because I basically told him like, the more I use ChatGPT, the more I'm aware of it being just kind of a word salad generator.
I mean, honestly, man, like I'm just looking at the first page here, but like this just reads like Alan Watts, basically.
Really?
Like it just feels like it's like just ripping
which,
Alan
again,
Watts or something.
What it is, right? Like it, was fed a bunch of like these texts.
This is always what I come back to, is that like I feel like Alan Watts like was sort of the Chat GPT of the time. Because like if you talk to like an actual Buddhist practitioner from like, I don't know, 1950 or something, and you listen to Alan Watts, like there's not really much connection, right? Like the actual, I don't know, Lama or whatever is like working in a highly controlled, disciplined environment where he like doesn't really, I don't know, it's very much not what Alan Watts, like nothing to do with how Alan Watts was either living or kind of what he was saying, right? I mean, he sort of was like this weird, I don't know, not terribly authentic,
but
AI, summarizer or something that like,
was he just like painting a pretty picture basically of what I think he was actually was?
I think he was kind of just telling people what they
needed to hear.
Kind of like Eckhart Tolle or something. These dudes that like just tell people things that sound very nice, but they're not really like at the end of the day, it mostly just comes down to like, just relax, right? It's like, just be in the moment, right? Just relax, or
there's no like practical elements.
I mean, they're not being like, you have to like wake up every day at 5 a.m. and like prepare the ritual space and then
right.
invoke correctly facing the east, or it won't work, right?
Right.
And like you have to do that for like 5 months or it won't work.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So I mean, like, you know, they're not making, or, you know, like, oh, you have to like go fight a war and maintain your equilibrium. Like they're not like throwing anything too, I don't know, challenging at you, right?
Right.
It's gonna like actually make some demands, or like, you know, push you to have to do things that you maybe kind of don't really want to do that much, or, you know, or things that don't seem to have an immediate, you know, payoff or something. So yeah, I mean, honestly, like I just looked at that briefly, but it just kind of reads like a, you know, Eckhart Tolle or Alan Watts kind of take, I guess. Yeah.
Which, yeah, I mean, again, it's cool that you can have a, you know, like a tulpa, a digital tulpa of some of these characters. But yeah.
I just like Alan Watts comes in for a lot of thrashing from from a lot of quarters, because he's just kind of like watering down, you know, Buddhism, and a lot of these things are kind of
yeah, I mean,
which I think he, like, to his credit, I think he sort of admitted that. Like, I don't think he was too
I don't think he, like, I think he just enjoyed articulating it, and I think it was well received by the culture at the time, and even now I think it's well received. Like, you know, if a video pops up in my feed of Alan Watts, one of his like speeches over inspirational music, it's hard to not listen to at least a bit of it, right?
Yeah.
And like I think the main thing I read from Alan Watts was the book on the taboo against knowing who you are, which basically is just like your God, right? Like it just tries to point in that direction where it's like you are the universal energy itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a positive cultural contribution overall, right? I mean, is it original? Is it groundbreaking? Like, not really, but he was the person in the position at the time to transpose or translate, or you know.
I think I guess it just comes down to that sense where it's like, I mean, like you're looking at something again like Eckhart Tolle or something,
right? Which I read as well.
It's like, yeah. So a lot of these things are like, well, if you're not really placing any either demands or challenging anyone to, like, you know,
really
kind of push deeper. Yeah. Well, that's one thing that
it's just kind of like self-help fluff.
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. So one thing that, like, my kind of like one of the dude that I always draw a lot of inspiration from, this Keith Sherholtz. Like, he said that's kind of the difference between self-help and actual practice. So he said, like, if you never wind up in a place where you're like surprised and horrified, then you're probably just doing self-help.
Yeah.
Because like self-help sort of starts from the perspective that, like, you're already okay. You know, right?
Right.
Because, like, it's sort of weird. Like, and I feel like it's even a weird way to look at it, because, like, you imagine, like, if you went to like a therapist or something, and they were just like, you're not okay. You know, like most people, like, I feel like most of them, they probably like wouldn't really do that, or they wouldn't be like, okay, like, you might, like, if you do this, you might end up somewhere that you don't even like. But like, you know, like, so Keith was saying, well, like, if you're really practicing, then you probably will end up in places that you don't either expect or like, because otherwise, what's the, like, if you're already perfect, then like, why would you do anything? Right?
So I mean, I think there's like, I wouldn't draw that firm of a split on kind of self-help practice.
Yeah.
my conceptualization of it, I guess, like I would say there's kind of different levels of teachers that are helpful at different stages in the pipeline.
Well, definitely, yeah.
So like let's put, Alan Watts, very like poppy kind of Buddhist self-help.
You could even include Robert Anton Wilson in that too.
Right, exactly.
And that's something I have said to Keith, because he's very he considers Robert Anton Wilson to be kind of just the Eckhart Tolle sense. And I kind of did, tell him like, I mean, but some people, like, you kind of, at some points, that is the teacher.
It needs to be accessible.
Yeah, it needs to be accessible
at
some point, and hopefully, ideally, you don't get stuck there and you do kind of dig deeper. But
so, like with Alan Watts, like, okay, someone. I mean, the fact that people still listen to his speeches, and still like circulated on YouTube or whatever, if someone is exposed to him for the first time, and the next day they're in their anxiety or whatever, and they have a moment where they take a deep breath and recenter, kind of remembering something that stuck with him from a cheesy video of his speech over inspirational music or whatever, then that's a win, right? That teaching was accessible to this person at that time, and ideally, I guess, that would eventually evolve into a practice where they actually start going deeper into, I don't know, like, what was it called? Dozen? What is it? Zen meditation?
Oh, right? Zazen or something. Well, any of these paths.
But any of these annoying things where it's like, okay, like I'm staring at the wall for 2 hours. And like, I'm hoping that there's something on the other side of this boredom or whatever, right? But yeah, so I mean, same thing with like piano teachers, right? Like I went through a few piano teachers growing up, and the early ones are like very like, oh, you're doing great, like, oh, you played that so well. And then you get deeper into it, and you have the teacher that like starts yelling at you,
rips
right?
you apart,
That basically tells you that no, you're not doing a good job.
Okay. You're not doing okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But like you can't have that as your first piano teacher, right?
Well, I think that Keith would probably agree with that, but I think his criticism is that like increasingly like the kind of reassuring, like, you don't have to change, like he's just kind of saying that like increasingly like people just aren't getting beyond that.
Interesting.
Okay. He's kind of saying that goes for everything. Like he's saying it goes for therapy, goes for occultism, goes for any practice really. It's like people are just getting stuck in
but is that new?
I don't know, man. I mean,
I feel like that's just kind of always been on the knowledge axis or practice.
Yeah, true. But I think it is kind of a common, at least like the extent to which things are getting, I don't know, propagated or engaged with, where, I mean, things which are like, I think this gets into those, what was it, like the life scripts or something from, I think it was transactional analysis, where there's kind of like 4 attitudes that people can have, where it's like
4 humors.
Similar, where it's like I'm okay, you're okay.
Oh yeah.
And then I'm not okay, you're okay.
Right.
I'm not okay, you're not okay. And then
I'm not okay, you're okay, or what?
It's things like that, right?
It's the classic like 2-axis pie chart, graph thing, right?
Yeah. So I think I think like the Alan Watts or like Eckhart Tolle approach is very much in the I'm okay, you're okay, and
which is where you want to be, basically, I believe, right?
Yeah, but then if that's always the case, then like why would you do any work, right? Like what is the point of having any?
But I mean, like, being okay is maybe not, if you look at it as a final destination, no affiliation to the movie, but just if you're conceptualizing that as being complete.
Right?
Well, I would get into this with Connor all the time, where he's like, you can't basically, like, if you're okay, then why would you practice, right? Why
Is
would
that what
you?
he was saying?
Yeah,
Okay,
basically, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you have this fundamental assumption that you're already there, then why do anything, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
my pushback would be like the being already there is the doing at the same time. That by doing it, you're already there. And so by not doing it, you're not there, right? But in doing it, you're already like, okay, right?
The practice is the path, but
right.
I think the kind of also Keith's stance is that like if you actually do it, you're gonna probably end up somewhere that you otherwise like wouldn't have been,
right?
Or you might turn into someone that you otherwise wouldn't have been, right? So it sort of is like well, I mean, he was just saying like, and I think he's kind of right in the sense that like a lot of people just use this as an excuse to like not do the work. It's like, why like I'm okay already, so why do I have to read like 20 books or something? Or like I'm okay already, so why do I have to do this annoying routine of quite taxing things which don't seem to have an immediate payoff or something. So yeah, I mean, if you can have some base stability as a springboard to do that, but a lot of the time it's pretty like, are people doing it? I feel like a lot of the time people are just kind of not doing it, or maybe
I mean,
getting stuck in comfort.
It's good question. I mean, I've questioned this recently as well. Like how many practices do you have, right?
Yeah.
Like I would say 2, 3. Like I have at least 3 or 4 that I can pull up, kind of off the top of my head. But more so of a question maybe for the listeners.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you're not practicing, then what are you doing, I guess?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's people that feel so overwhelmed that they're just even getting through anything seems like an achievement. But presumably, yeah, if you are advocating,
I feel really overwhelmed as well.
Yeah, certainly, yeah. I mean,
I just accept that as a given in life, right?
I agree, but yeah, there's people that can't, even keep any stability together, I guess. Yeah. So there's that sense, but
yeah.
Well, I guess that's why I like,
and that's why you need to practice, because that's what's going to give you the backbone.
I think that's sort of maybe tying this back to what we were talking about with populism and stuff. So, the reason the Keith stance is maybe kind of controversial, or he's a pretty controversial dude, right?
He doesn't pull punches.
Yeah, he doesn't pull punches, and a lot of people are like, oh, he's just an asshole, or he's just bitter, or he's just whatever. But so I mean, I think the reason it's controversial is because then you do throw up the idea of like an elite, right? And the elite presumably is like the people that can actually do the practice, right? And then end up somewhere that they wouldn't, otherwise have been, right? So again, like if you're marketing something or trying to sell something that in practice a lot of people probably just won't be able to do, then you're going to have to somehow downgrade it or soft sell it in a way that is not going to make that too apparent. Well, because I mean, like I guess like the Eckhart Tolle thing is just, I always just come back to it because it's just such a, or was that book the Alchemist, which there's this book called The Alchemist by this
vaguely
Paulo Coelho or whatever, and it's one of these punchline books that is just like full of this very chat GPT-ish wisdom of like
but I also remember kids in elementary school reading it, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, that's about the level that it's I mean it's basically on an elementary school level, but
what ideas does it introduce?
Just I mean literally just what chat GPT just you're already there, you are the path, and you are the destination, and blah blah blah, and like you don't have to, right? So it's
But
very
if
like
you can make those ideas accessible to a fourth grader, that's an achievement, right?
Yeah, but I think in the sense that you're if your platform is just entirely step one, and then there's not really any. I mean, like Eckhart Tolle. I mean, what doesn't it, did he ever get around to any? I mean, I haven't read it, but I mean, like from what I can make out, it's just he's basically just saying live in the moment.
Basically,
You
yeah.
know? So you just live in the moment.
Live in the moment. Ego's an illusion.
Ego's an illusion. Don't worry about anything. You know, just
Yeah.
try to be present
Yeah.
or whatever. And so, like, does he ever get
Progress
to
any further?
anything beyond
Yeah.
that? I mean, doesn't seem like it. So
Yeah. But again, I'll just put it in the early in the pipeline teacher category,
yeah,
right? I mean,
yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
is your arrowhead long and narrow,
Well,
or is it like broad
sure, but
and wide, right?
Yeah, so
like it's just two different tools.
there is that
right?
aspect, but there's also is this sense in which, like, if you're gonna come out with a platform,
right?
Is it even in your best interest to have a step two?
Right.
Because, like, if very few people are actually going to be capable of doing it, then I think this is a problem that a lot of these, including Crowley, because his system, if you actually do it as this outline is supposed to be done, is, you know, I mean, it is hugely time consuming. It's hugely, you know, book intensive.
Right.
You know, you're supposed to read, like, casually, you know, read, you know, 50 plus books that are very dense and long and, you know, metaphysical and
right.
You know, there's physical components.
Yeah.
You know, you're supposed to work on, you know, astral kind of stuff, which is not super easy either.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do it as it's supposed to be done, it is pretty, you know, separating the, you know, I don't know, wheat from the chaff or whatever,
Sure.
in terms of people that can even do it
Mm-hmm.
or will do it. So if you're trying to break that, if you're trying to get a platform with stuff based on that, then yeah, you're probably going to try to make it seem easier, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you're going to try to explain it in beginner mode, or
Mm-hmm.
you're going to try to break things down to, you know, lower reading levels,
Mm-hmm.
lower practice levels.
Mm-hmm.
But if you break things down too much, then, like, there does get to be a certain point where it's like, well,
it's just completely insubstantial.
Yeah, or like to what extent are you even representing it?
Right.
If you're breaking, and that's kind of Keith's take, right?
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
I would pretty much agree with.
I would agree with it. Yeah, I would just say you need both. You need both.
Yeah.
Maybe just to cap it off here, and
pushing
just a few minutes here, but. I find I've talked previously about the hip stretching practice. I guess you could even say that I've been doing. The teacher is Lucas Rockwood.
Okay.
But I feel like what he does effectively is, you know, he's like, okay, we're gonna, you know, it's a 15-minute video every day, you know, 3 stretches, 5 minutes each.
Yeah.
We get straight into it, and then we talk like as we hold the pose, basically like deep breathing while holding a pose. And he's trying to also get you to pay attention and notice, like, okay, well, this is especially tight. Like, oh, you know, my left side's much tighter than my right side here.
And some awareness of it.
Yeah. But so I think like what he does very effectively is he introduces the practice in a very digestible format. You know, it's just 15 minutes, right? You can find 15 minutes in a day, right? But like, I think the implicit idea is that if you actually do this practice, you'll end up spending more time doing it, because as you pay attention, you're like, okay, well, 15 minutes isn't enough really. Like, I maybe can tread water that way, but if you're trying to actually make any improvement,
you gotta kind of invest a little bit more. Yeah.
But he never tells you to do that, right? But it's just purely through.
It's kind of implication is coming out.
Yeah. So I know I found that approach kind of interesting and effective, and it's funny. His slogan is "Practice is everything." Yeah. So I mean, just kind of, good teacher, I guess is my book report on that. But yeah, let's wrap this one up.
Wrap this one up.
DBLV on Instagram.
Justin Isis 93 on Instagram, and Justin Isis 1 on X, which I think it officially is now.
Yeah, I believe that's the biological name
The biological name,
or his mineral name.
But I always thought Twitter was a dumb name anyway. So I mean, X is pretty edgelord, but I always just thought the Twitter original, aesthetic was like pretty. Black, so.
Just very of that time, I guess, right? Yeah. Very .com, post.com kind of tech world landscape. But yeah, thanks for listening, folks. Catch you later.